Now let's shift to introducing ACT specifically for OCD with your clients. I start with providing them information about OCD, and how I talked about that earlier is often how I'll talk about it with clients. I let them know that there's three main components of OCD: the obsessions, which are intrusive, unwanted thoughts, images, urges, sensations, stuff that happens inside of us, and that these are things that we don't choose to be there. And sometimes they're inconsistent with how we are as people. You want to talk about this in ACT consistent language. You're going to be referring to this as the internal world, that there's not anything that's wrong with their thoughts, or that their thoughts are bad, or that they need to think about them differently, that they need to shift the ways that they're thinking. To maintain ACT consistency, you can describe it just as I did there. Then you'll want to share with them the second part, which are compulsions. I describe this to my clients as these are things that you do in order to try to not feel or think about or experience the obsessions. This can be something that you do over and over, or this can be something that you are doing once in that instance, but if it is effective, you tend to do it again in the future. It can be useful in the moment, but they often tend to not work in the long run as far as getting rid of the obsessions. Then I describe the disorder piece to them. What that means is just that it's impairing or negatively impacting their life or their functioning. And I often share with clients that I'm not a big fan of the diagnostic system that we have, because it labels normal experiences as abnormal. Sharing with them that intrusive, unwanted thoughts are absolutely typical and are not always a part of OCD, that people have these types of thoughts and don't have OCD. People without OCD can experience OCD symptoms, and letting them know that OCD is just a name that we as professionals gave to this group of symptoms to make it easier to talk about. But that doesn't mean that this is something that is permanent or that there's something broken in their brain, because that is a message that can be shared with people. And so I really try to undo that from the beginning of treatment to let them know that there's nothing wrong with their brain. We're just going to help them think about or interact with their thoughts differently. Then I really shift into talking about the normality and the automaticity of our thoughts. I hit this pretty hard at the beginning, and this really touches on the diffusion concept in ACT. And how I approach this with them is I say things like, I want you to notice what happens in your mind. If I were to say, Mary had a little, what happened? Most people say lamb, if they are familiar with that. So obviously doing culturally appropriate phrases that someone's going to know a response to, or something that will come up quick like that. And so I talk with people about, did you choose for that to be there? Did you purposely make yourself think lamb? Or did your mind just immediately create that because you have a history with Mary had a little and it happens? Then I say, why would we expect our other thoughts to be any different from that? If we have random thoughts that come up in our head, it's very similar to lamb just popping up there. But we have much less of a reaction to lamb than we do, I'm going to stab my child. And so if the thoughts are inconsistent with who we are, like I'm going to stab my child, they can be just as random, but we cannot always choose what our thoughts and emotions are. I talk with people about examples from my own life, and I share with them that I don't have OCD and I have intrusive thoughts, or I have unwanted thoughts or random thoughts. And the example I will give them is that I'll have thoughts while I'm driving, like, oh, what if I just turned my steering wheel and just drove off the road? I wonder what would happen. I wonder if I would die. I think especially if you share ones that people wouldn't expect you to talk about. For example, when I'm driving and there's people walking on a crosswalk in front of me, sometimes I have the thought of maybe I should just push the gas and hit people with my car. I think people will start to get the sense of, oh, okay, these things are things that other people have, and often people just don't talk about them. And then we talk about if our thoughts are always consistent with what we want to do or what we don't want to do. So I will try to bring this out for clients by saying, do you always feel like going to work when you go to work? Most people can say no. There are days you wake up tired and that you don't feel like going, and yet you still go because there's something about that that's important. Or have they ever given a presentation when they felt nervous? Or do they ever go to the gym and work out when they're feeling tired? Or not getting drunk in the middle of your workday? There are certain things that people may have thoughts and urges to do, but we definitely don't do them, or we do them because there are reasons for that. And there can be forces that are larger than just what our thoughts and our emotions say to do. And so helping them see what we're going to talk about is how do we get in touch with what those larger forces are? And how do we live our lives according to those rather than just random stuff that our minds throw at us? I talk with them about how in the work with me, we're going to focus on what makes those thoughts, the obsessions, different from other thoughts, if they are different. So you want to leave it open to them and see if how we respond to them has anything to do with what those obsessions do. If we treat them differently, do they act differently? Or do they feel differently if we treat them differently? So the key points I want you to take away from this video are you want to share OCD or what OCD is with your client from an ACT consistent perspective, making sure that they understand what the components of OCD are. So you're talking in the same language. You want to highlight the normality and the automaticity of their internal experiences and particularly thoughts. And then explain that the work that you're going to be doing with them will help them understand their relationship to their internal experiences and how that influences their life and their internal experiences.